Coffee consumption in the UK since the 1970s has tripled, but at the same time, tea consumption has decreased by 63%. So coffee is on its way up dramatically, and tea is on its way out in the UK. Hey guys, I'm Eric.
And I'm Grace. We're the Wandering Ravens.
We're a couple of Yanks living here in Paris.
But we make British culture videos 3 times a week on this channel.
So to make sure that you don't miss any of that great British culture content, make sure you click subscribe and whack the notification bell so that you get notified every time we release a new video. Today we are going to be introducing you to 7 things we didn't know about the UK before we visited.
But before we get started, make sure you smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm.
Something we did not know before we went to the UK was that you can figure out the history of a city or a town just by knowing its name.
How can this be?
I know. For example, towns ending with Castor, Cester, or Chester were established by the Romans as fort or market towns.
Some examples of these Roman establishments that still exist in the UK today are Manchester, Ulster, Leicester, Lancaster. Hope I'm saying all of those right. Not really sure.
Moving through history, we found out that towns ending with bra or ham or ton were established by the Anglo-Saxons.
A couple of examples would be Shitterton, Nottingham, and Edinburgh.
If the name Shitterton surprises you, it definitely surprised us, and you can see a lot more crazy and rather crude British place names in this video right here. Then, thanks to Viking invasions, there are a lot of Scandinavian place names in the UK as well, and these cities or towns generally end with B.
2 examples would be Ashby and Appleby.
Finally, our little tour of history is going to end here with William the Conqueror in 1066, who brought the Normans into the UK, and as a result, there are a lot of French place names.
Some examples would be Beamish, Bewdley, and Pontefract. I hope I'm saying all of those right.
These names come from the Norman words for beautiful mansion, beautiful place, and broken bridge.
Oh, but that was a good town.
Broken bridge.
What should we call this stupid town with a broken bridge? Pontefract.
So yeah, this was something which was super exciting for us to learn about when we first visited the UK. If we got any of these town pronunciations wrong, do let us know. Also, if there are other fun town histories that you know about in the UK, do drop those histories down below. The distinction between the terms UK, England, and Great Britain.
This is honestly so confusing for many Yanks, and I can say when we first visited the UK, this is something that we were still very confused about. We were not sure that we were getting our terms correct or anything.
As we've mentioned in previous videos, most Americans, unless they've been to the UK or studied British history extensively in school, they're not really sure which countries count as in the United Kingdom. For example, Northern Ireland, a lot of Americans probably don't know that Northern Ireland is part of the UK. And as we've mentioned before, Scotland, a lot of Americans think of Scotland as its own independent country. I used to think that Scotland was its own thing, separate from the UK. That's just because we have a lot of Scottish representation in American culture, and so Scotland is never really referred to as part of the UK in the States. It's always the UK, and then you have Scotland. So yeah, just the relationship between all 4 of those countries and which countries are in the UK, which ones are not part of the UK, that was all very confusing for us when we first arrived, and we got to learn about it while we were there, and finally, I think we finally have it figured out.
If you're American and you're watching this, please look up the UK, its definition, the countries that are in the UK, and know that before visiting the UK. It'll spare you a lot of embarrassment, and it'll also keep you from causing offense.
You do not want to call a Scottish person English. You might get a Glaswegian kiss. Bam!
Another thing that we didn't know before visiting the UK is that students wear uniforms.
In the United States, we do have private schools where students do wear uniforms, but they're pretty rare. In all of my time living in America and traveling around America, there was only a few times I saw students in uniform. But in the UK, it's the standard school dress. So, public, private schools, both, you're going to be wearing uniforms there, which to us was a big surprise when we first arrived in the UK, and it felt like Hogwarts had just let out.
Yeah.
Which I know
is not something we're supposed to say.
Yeah,
it's just like Harry Potter. No.
We know British people don't like it when Americans compare the UK to Harry Potter, but do understand that that is one of the only representations of British culture in the United States. So Yeah.
That's what they have to compare it to, and maybe it's not accurate. Like, obviously, it's got witches and wizards and all that.
Although we do know that the UK does have lots of witches. Yeah, like the Pendle Witch Trials. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's lots of witches in the UK.
Didn't they start that before we started the Salem Witch Trials, too?
Yeah,
It
the
kinda
Salem Witch
kicked it
Trials
all.
came from...
The Pendle Witch
Yeah, so...
stuff.
Thanks for that. The standard of evidence and stuff back then was not very strong.
I wonder if someday people are going to look back at this present time that we're in and be like, you know, those people, they actually burned down 5G towers. A few hundred years before that, they were burning witches, but like...
Yeah, the UK does have a passion for burning things, I think. Because you got Bonfire Night. Is that the same as Guy Fawkes Night?
Yes,
So
I think
yeah,
so.
you burn Guy Fawkes effigies, burn those massive bonfires, you burn witches, burn 5G towers, and then to wrap it all up, you even got Burns Night. Which, you're not really burning things, but still, it's in the name.
It's in the name.
Next thing we didn't know about the UK is that this nation has a incredibly robust class system.
This is a very recent discovery of ours. We had no idea that classism existed to the extent that it does in the UK until after we had already visited. Now, full disclosure, we have only really learned about classism in England, so we are very curious. Does classism exist in other parts of the UK? And is it as strong as it is in England specifically?
Our class system education has been through three main sources. One, YouTube comments from you guys, thank you so much. Two, this documentary, which we reacted to right up here. Do watch it if you want to catch our honest reaction to the British class system in real time. And three, a book called Watching the English, which has a great explanation about the class system and how it breaks down in terms of just, you know, how to identify what class someone is based on what they decorate their house with, what they call the smallest room in the house, and all that sort of stuff. The main reason why the class system was such a big surprise for us to learn about was that it's not like the class system in the United States, whereas in the States, our class system is pretty much based only on wealth, you know, how much money you have. So if you make a certain amount a year, you are middle class. If you make under that, you are lower class. And if you make, you know, above a certain amount, then you are considered rich. We don't really have the term upper class, we just call them the rich.
I also would say that we don't have the term lower class, we would say low income.
Yeah, the only phrase where I've heard people use the word class in the States is middle class.
Middle class, yeah.
So we have low income, middle class, rich. And then of course each of those breaks down into various, same way it does in the UK. But in the UK, it's different because it's not based on wealth, it's based on heritage and education. So depending on how you speak, who your parents were, and all that sort of stuff, that's what determines which class you're in. You could be a multi-billionaire like Jeff Bezos. He is the richest man in the world, but in the UK, he would still be considered working class because he came from a poor background and made all his wealth
all
himself.
Yeah. That's very confusing. And also the whole idea of class climbing, because in the US, it's a lot more straightforward. Just earn more money and you class climb.
Yeah.
But in the UK, I think class climbing is you have to relearn a whole bunch of things, like the way you speak and the way you dress. And
yeah, class climbing takes generations where, you know, I'm working class, but I made a bunch of money. So now, even though I'm a millionaire, I'm still working class. But my kids, because my kids are going to a better school, speaking with better accents and stuff like that, they will be middle class. And then if they continue in that way for a few generations, then we could get up into the upper class. It's very fascinating for us. We've really enjoyed learning about the class system.
yeah, that's definitely not something we were aware of before we visited the UK. Tea time.
When we first went to the UK, we assumed that the claim that British people are constantly drinking tea was just a massively overblown American stereotype. Boy, we were wrong. Based on our personal experience in the UK, British people are almost always drinking tea. Well, of course, that's a dramatic overstatement, but they drink a lot of tea. Whenever we went to someone's house, they would immediately offer us tea. As soon as the cup was empty, they'd offer us more tea. After we were done drinking tea at their house, they would say, hey, let's go to the cafe and drink more tea. Go to the cafe, drink more tea, come back home. Do you want some tea?
I love this aspect of British culture, and I'm also curious if this is like widespread, like everywhere in the UK loves tea, or are there some places in the UK that prefer coffee?
You guys can let us know. But yeah, speaking of coffee, based on data we've seen from the UK Department
of Environment, Food, and Rural Affairs.
Thank you.
Is it that one?
That's the one. Based on data from the UK Department for Environment, Food, and Rural Affairs. Got it.
That's a
Nailed it.
mouthful.
I got such a great memory. Mind like a steel trap, I tell you. Based on data from this agency, coffee consumption in the UK since the 1970s has tripled. So 3 times as many people are drinking coffee in the UK now than were back in the 1970s. But at the same time, tea consumption has decreased by 63% since the 70s. So coffee is on its way up dramatically, and tea is on its way out in the UK. Next thing we did not know about the UK before we arrived, church towers have bell ringers in them, like actual people that ring bells.
It's not just like a robot or like a mechanical looking person, you know, that always
A robotic Quasimodo.
Yes. Like,
Dong, dong, Esmeralda.
there's a cafe near Notre Dame called the Esmeralda.
Oh, wow.
Fun fact, the more you know. We actually thought that the bells in the UK were automated or timed, that they would go every hour or half hour.
Yeah, like there's a gear or something that makes them ring.
I think I had this realization one day because it wasn't half past and it wasn't on the hour. So I was like,
It was a Thursday night.
yeah.
Yeah, because the town we were staying in, the bell ringers practice every Thursday night. And so our first Thursday in the town, we heard all of this chaotic bell ringing. We're like, what is that? You know, it doesn't sound
Is it a wedding?
quite right. It was just dong, 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 dong. And then it would stop. And then it would start again. And then it would stop. And then we realized, there must be people up there.
Either that or they're little tiny elves. They're hammers. Learning about bell ringing in the UK is honestly one of our favorite memories, one of our favorite things that we learned while we were there, because we made friends with the team of bell ringers who practiced every Thursday night, and we even got to go up in the tower and sit in on some of the practice sessions. So I'm convinced you would have been a bell ringing boy.
I definitely would have been. If we ever live in the UK permanently, I will find a tower and become a bell ringer. It was so much fun.
The culture is very different. Some Americans are tempted to think that because the UK and USA share a common language, that their cultures must also be similar. I've even heard some American friends say that while they don't think they could do international dating, they believe that they could date a British person because after all, Brits aren't that different from Americans. And this could not be further from the truth. They are so different.
There are so many differences. Everything from slang, accent, priorities, optimism, comedy, politics, and even the definition of the word quite is different. In the words of George Bernard Shaw, classic, we are 2 countries separated by a common language. So we speak the same language, sometimes, but in terms of culture, we are very, very different. And I think that was something that took us by a big surprise. And I'm ashamed to admit this, but going to the UK, I wasn't very excited to be there. Actually, to go there. Because
So beforehand.
Yeah, beforehand, when our trip was coming up, I was not as excited to go to the UK as I'd been to go to other countries, because in my mind I was thinking, it's travel, but it's not going to be that different.
It's not going to have that same travel feel about it because, after all, we're kind of,
kind of the same. So it'll be kind of like visiting a different state in America or something like that. I believed our cultures to be very similar. But as soon as we landed in the UK, and probably within our first 24 hours in the country, we very quickly realized things are very different here. And that was one of the most pleasant surprises I've ever had in my life.
I think for both of us, we were very surprised at how much we loved the UK and how it quickly climbed on our list of countries to being a place that we really, really, really want to go back to and spend a lot of time in.
And basically, since we've left the UK, we haven't stopped exploring it through books and television and talking with British people, talking with you guys in the comment sections. As you can tell just by looking through our videos, and you can see we used to make videos in general about travel and culture in Korea and Asia and all that sort of stuff. But after we visited the UK, our channel very quickly switched, and now we exclusively do videos about British culture. So you can see the change that has happened in our hearts. My heart has grown 3 sizes. About the Queen, I heard her voice, and I was like,
Yes.
yes.
I will answer the call.
George Washington is turning in his grave right now.
But haggis is a merciful master.
That's
after
true.
all.
Oh man, but you guys have haggis and we don't have haggis, so The ball is entirely in your court, UK. If you want to hear our top 10 reasons why we love the UK, do watch this playlist of videos right here.
We release new videos 3 times a week, so make sure you subscribe to our channel so that you never miss a new video.
And make sure you like this video to help the YouTube algorithm promote this video and continue spreading the praise and glory of haggis and British culture around the internet.
And speaking of things that we love, a huge thank you to our chuffed virtuosos Gary and Rachel Smith. We couldn't have made this video without you.
If you like the idea of chatting with us on monthly live streams, joining our private Facebook group where we talk about British culture and all sorts of other fun related topics, then do go down to the description and click our Patreon link. Joining our Patreon community earns you access to all of these fun things and is also a great way to support this channel and help us produce higher quality content. Again, I'm Eric.
And I'm Grace.
We're the Wandering Ravens.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Bisous!